Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Let's talk about race. Let's talk about the Confederacy. Mitch Landrieu, he's the younger brother, 5 years younger, of Mary Landrieu. And the Landrieux are kind of a dynastic family politically in Louisiana. He is the mayor of New Orleans. And there is all this, and he is taking down Confederate statues. And he's getting death threats. And over in Mississippi, we had a member of the state legislature say that anybody who takes down a Confederate statue should be lynched. So Mitch Landrieu got up and gave, I think it was yesterday, I believe it was. Oh, it was Friday? Okay, thank you. Anyhow, Mitch Landrieu gave a speech, just a mind-boggling speech. I learned about it today, which is why I thought it was yesterday. Anyhow, this incredible speech, and I want to share some pieces of it with you, and would love to hear your thoughts on it. So let's just start at the beginning. He starts out by talking about the diversity of New Orleans.
The soul of our beloved city is rooted in a history that has evolved over thousands of years, rooted in a diverse people who've been here together every step of the way, through good and through bad. It is a history, our history, that holds in its heart the stories of Native Americans, the Choctaw, the Houma, the Chitimacha, Hernando de Soto, Robert Cavalier, Sir de La Salle, the Acadians, the Islanos, the enslaved people of Senegambia, free people of color, the Haitians, the Germans, both empires of France and Spain, the Italian, the Irish, the Cubans, the South and Central Americans, the Vietnamese, and so many more. You see, New Orleans is truly a city of many nations, a melting pot, a bubbling cauldron of many cultures. There is no other place quite like it in the world that so eloquently exemplifies the uniquely American motto, e pluribus unum, out of many, we are one.
Now, I would say, yeah. I mean, I've been to New Orleans many times, and it is an extraordinary and diverse city. But this is true of our entire nation, or at least it should be. So anyhow, he goes on to say, okay, we've got all this diversity and all these, all this history, and the only monuments which are being taken down right now are, that reflect that history, or the major monuments, are to Confederate generals and things. Why just that? Here he is.
New Orleans was one of America's largest slave markets, a port where hundreds of thousands of souls were bought, sold, and shipped up the Mississippi River to lives of forced labor, of misery, of rape, and of torture. America was a place where nearly 4,000 of our fellow American citizens were lynched, 540 in Louisiana alone, where our courts enshrined separate but equal, where freedom riders were beaten to a bloody pulp. So when people say to me that the monuments in question are history, well, what I just described to you is our history as well. And it is a searing truth. And it immediately begs the question, why there are no slave ship monuments, no prominent markers on public land to remember the lynchings or the slave blocks, nothing to remember this long chapter of our lives of pain, of sacrifice, of shame, all of it happening on the soil of New Orleans.
And he says, for those self-appointed defenders of history and the monuments, they are eerily silent on what amounts to this historical malfeasance, a lie by omission. There is a difference between remembrance of history and reverence of it. Is just to finish that little riff of his. And then he goes on to, we need to loosen our grip on this false narrative that the Confederacy is like the only history of the South, and that it's the real history of the South, and it's a noble history. Well, here, let Mitch Landrieu tell you.
Now, with these shocking words still ringing in your ears, I want to try to gently peel your hands from the grip on this false narrative of our history that I think weakens us, and make straight a wrong turn that we made many years ago, so we can more closely connect with the integrity to the founding principles of our nation and forge a clearer, straighter path towards a better city and towards a more perfect union. Now, last year, President Obama echoed these sentiments about the need to contextualize and to remember all of our history. He recalled a single piece of stone, a slave auction block engraved with a marker commemorating a single moment in 1830 when Andrew Jackson and Henry Clay stood and spoke from it. President Obama said, "Consider what this artifact tells us about history. On a stone where day after day, for years, men and women, bound and bought, sold and bid like cattle on a stone, worn down by the tragedy of over 1,000 bare feet. And for a long time, the only thing we considered important, the singular thing we chose to commemorate as history with a plaque, were the unmemorable speeches of these two powerful men. A piece of stone, one stone, both stories history, one story told, one story forgotten, or maybe even purposefully ignored."
And I obviously purposely ignored. I mean, it doesn't fit with the narrative of those noble white people in the South who were, just fighting the oppression of whatever. Then he tells a personal story from his dear friend Wynton Marsalis. Here it is.
I just hope people listen like I did when my dear friend Wynton Marsalis helped me see the truth. He asked me to think about all the people who have left New Orleans because of our exclusionary attitudes. Another friend asked me to consider these four monuments from the perspective of an African-American mother or father trying to explain to their fifth-grade daughter why Robert E. Lee sat atop of our city. Can you do it? Can you do it? Can you look into the eyes of this young girl and convince her that Robert E. Lee is there to encourage her? Do you think that she feels inspired and hopeful by that story? Do these monuments help her see her future with limitless potential? Have you ever thought that if her potential is limited, yours and my limited potential as well? We all know the answers to these very simple questions.
And then we're listening to a speech by New Orleans Mayor Mitch Landrieu from last Friday. And, somehow I missed this until today, and it just, my mea culpa. But this should have been all over the media, in my opinion. He finally, in the final clip I'm going to share with you, he points out that, it goes back to the e pluribus unum, out of many one, indivisibility, that this is our essence. Here he is.
It seems absurd. Century-old wounds are still raw because, you see, they never healed right in the first place. So here is the essential truth. We are better together than we are apart. Indivisibility is our essence. Isn't this the gift that we, the people of New Orleans, have given to the world? We radiate beauty and grace in our food, in our music, in our architecture, in our joy of life, in our celebration of death, in everything that we do. We gave the world this funky thing called jazz. It is the most uniquely American art form that has developed across the ages and from different cultures. Think about second lines. Think about Mardi Gras. Think about muffaletta. Think about the Saints. Think about gumbo. Think about red beans and rice. By God, just think. All we hold dear is created by throwing everything in the pot, creating, producing something better. Everything a product of our historic diversity. We are proof that out of many, we are one and better for it. Out of many, we are one, and we really do love it. And yet, And yet, we still find so many excuses to not do the right thing. President Bush's words, once again, a great nation does not hide its history. It faces its flaws and corrects them. We forget, we deny how much we really depend on each other, how much we really need each other. We justify our silence and inaction by manufacturing noble causes that marinate in historic denial.
It's absolutely brilliant, isn't it? We'll be back with your call.